Hello, bonjour. Welcome to the first Brazilian Week CCBC online festival, a digital event organized by the Chamber of Commerce Brasil-Canadá, also known as CCBC, in partnership with the Brazilian Embassy in Ottawa, the Brazilian consulates in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, and sponsored by Air Canada. My name is Paulo de Castro Reis, and I'm the Executive Director of CCBC. The festival presents more than 20 webinars distributed in three main areas: business opportunities, innovation, and Brazilian culture. Besides, the Brazilian Week website offers free access to more than 200 cultural contents. It's important to mention that with the same link that you're using to watch this session, you can participate in as many sessions and many webinars as you wish. There are lots of opportunities in the Brazil-Canada relations, and we hope that this festival may contribute to exploring and identify all the potential of this relationship. Specifically, in this session, we will be talking about consumer trends in the Brazilian market. We have three very special guests with us today, and we will start with Marcel Motta, General Director at Euromonitor in Brazil. Welcome, Marcel.
Welcome. Thank you for the introduction. Nice to meet everyone that is watching. I think this is a good opportunity for us to, we have a big agenda to talk about the Brazilian market, what it represents and what is the context in the global economy. Brazil as a consumer market has got a huge potential just because of the sheer size of its population. But it's important to put it in context, and it's a pleasure for me to come here and to talk a little bit about this market and what it represents and what sort of opportunities this might represent for foreign companies, Canadian companies looking to invest and expand into Brazil. I'm going to share my screen. Just give me one moment. So one of the things, I'm the director for Euromonitor International in Brazil. Euromonitor is a British company. We do market research around the world, and we are because we are present all over the globe. The information that we put together enables us to have a good contextualization of magnitude of markets on comparison between countries and a map of opportunities for companies and governments wanting to invest in different parts of the world. Today in the agenda, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I came up with this thing called the Rule of Five. As I was looking at the data between Brazil and Canada. A lot of the number 5% of this came up. Rank top 5 came up. So I want to talk a little bit about the Rule of Five, and I think this is going to be a good takeaway for everyone, a simple, easy takeaway. I wanted also to discuss a little bit about Brazil as a consumer market in the context of the global market. And then, just because I think the bulk of our audience is Canadian, to talk a little bit about the Brazilian household in comparison with the Canadian household. And then just to close and give the hook to our next speaker, I'll talk a little bit about e-commerce. I think Ailton is going to cover this in the next part. So the Rule of Five, what does that mean? What does 5 mean, right? Once I started looking at, let's put it this way. If we look at most of the industries we cover globally, Brazil represents around 5%. So if it's a company that is 100 billion, company globally, Brazil will have a ballpark opportunity of 5 billion US. Won't say, obviously this will vary, but it won't go much. We have some industries that will push 6 or 7, and we have some industries around 4 or 5, but the bulk of it will go around 5%. So I think that's the rule of 5 that I'm talking about. First industry that I want to talk about is packaged foods. Packaged foods globally, it's an industry that we track, and globally it moves about $2.3 trillion annually. Brazil represents about $90 billion of this total industry and is the 5th largest market globally. What does that mean in other terms? Is that it was 92 billion in 2019. We're expecting Brazilian packaged foods markets to move about 100 billion US dollars in 2020. This market accounts, the Brazilian market accounts for 4%. Remember the rule of 5? So it's around 5%, but it's 4% of the global market. Brazil is the 5th largest global consumer markets for packaged foods products, just after the US, Japan, China, and Germany. And then one other thing about Brazil that I think it's important to mention, right, is that Brazil, not only it's large in magnitude, but it's what we consider a growth market. And a growth market means that the market, differently from Europe and countries in North America, that it's more stable in its growth. Brazil has had an aggressive rate of growth for consumer markets in the last year. So for example, we have an average growth for Brazil between 2015 and 2019 on packaged foods items consumption of about 6% annually. This represents about 4.8 billion a year in new consumption. So Brazil contributes to the global market about $5 billion a year in packaged foods products. So for you to have an idea what this means, the total market, the total packaged foods markets of Ecuador, it's about 4.5 million. So Brazil in the last 5 years created a country the size of Ecuador in consumption of foods, of packaged foods items, and it contributed to 4.5 billion in consumption to the global market. Another example that's very important for Brazil is the beauty and personal care market. The beauty and personal care market, it's important. It moved about $500 billion globally last year, and Brazil represented $29 billion last year. And Brazil is the 4th largest market globally on this. What does this mean? It means that the Brazilian market moved $29 billion last year. It's expected to move $29 billion this year. Forgive me there. It accounts for about 6% of the global market. Again, the 5% rule. It is the 4th largest global market after the US, China, and Japan. And it has a growth rate of 3.2 average, and it contributed to adding to the global market $1 billion a year in the last 5 years. Just to give you another example, New Zealand is a market that moves $1 billion a year in new products, in beauty and personal care products a year. So Brazil created a country the size of New Zealand every year for the last 5 years, contributing to the global beauty and personal care market. Another example is soft drinks, same contextualization. It's a market that moved, this is in liters now, because this is a standard for the industry. It's about 581 billion liters in 2019. Brazil is the 6th largest market, again, right? So it always around, it kind of circles around the 5. Top 5 represents 5%. So the same thing, the same rationale, it's $20 billion market for this year for soft drinks. It's 4% of the global market. Again, it goes around 5%. It is the 5th largest global market just after the US, China, Japan, and Mexico. And it has a CAGR of 6.6% over the last 5 years, which added 1.1 billion a year. with the same comparison I did for other examples, Brazil has been at about 1 Portugal a year in consumption of soft drinks for the last 5 years. Pet care, I know it's another hot industry that has not only been growing in the last 5 years, but it picked up some speed recently as well because of the pandemic that we're going through right now. It's a global market of 137 billion US dollars. And Brazil is the 3rd largest global market for pet care products in the world. What does that mean? Brazil represents 6 billion of the total global market. It is around 4.5% of the total global market. Again, around 5%. It is the 3rd largest global market, and it has a CAGR of 10% in the last 5 years, which has been adding about $500 million, 450 million US dollars a year. This is the size of what a pet care market in India is every year. So in the last 5 years, Brazil has been creating a country the size of India in pet care products year after year for the last 5 years. So this is what a growth market means, and it's something that you need to get used to if you think about playing in Brazil. So the rule of 5, let's talk a little bit more about that because this is going to be a big takeaway for you. If we look at now, I want to give you a little context into the households population of Brazil versus Canada. This is no news for you, but the US has got approximately 14 million households. Canada has got approximately 14 million households in the country, and the median age of the population is 41. The composition of the households, 30% is about single person households, 50% accounts for households of 2 to 3 people, and then 21% for people, for households with 4 people or above. If you put that in comparison with Brazil, Canada's got 37 million people in the country. Brazil's got 211 million. Canada's got 14 million households. Brazil's got 66 million households. And it's a younger population. It's a population, Canada's got a median age of 41. Brazil, it's got a median age of 33. And if we look at population and households, we're also 5 times larger than Canada in terms of population and number of households. Again, one of the important things, the takeaways about this slide is that Brazil has got a smaller component of single unit households, single person households. Canada has got 30%, Brazil has got 15% of single person households, but the rest of the composition is the same. Now, still talking about the rule of 5, what does that mean? If we look at, I want you to look at this slide and look at the Brazil and Canada as an economy, they are both approximately the same size, right? 1.8 billion trillion US in GDP. But Canada, if you look here, has got a per capita income of 46,000 US. Brazil has got 8,000 in per capita terms. So, and this is 5 times lower than Canada. So those are the important things for you to think about. Brazil has got a population that is 5 times larger, but if we look at the income per capita across the country, it's 5 times lower than the Canadian income. Obviously, those are all averages, right? And they don't tell the whole story. So one of the things that I did here was I'm looking at number of households in Brazil and Canada that has today the per capita income, average per capita income that we have in Canada of about $45,000 US. So in Canada, we have about 8.4 million households with income above $45,000 a year. And Brazil, even though on average, you know, the income of Brazilian households are about $8,000, we have almost 6,000 households with income the same as Canada. Another way to look at this is that, and then if I push this all the way, looking at households and disposable income over $300,000 a year. And this is the interesting part. In this part, Brazil has more households with income of 300,000 and above than Canada has, about twice as many. This only happens at the very end. If you look at, obviously, if you look at 40, below 45, Brazil has got way more households in that line. But and then if we push it above 150,000, Canada still has more households with income of 150,000 and above. But and then when you push to super, $300,000 a year, Brazil's got about 300,000 households, twice as many as Canada. So I know it's hard to talk about a country as complex as Brazil, but I kind of wanted to give you a size of magnitude of the opportunity in Brazil to make you think about where the opportunities lie, right, in different industries for you guys to start coming into Brazil. E-commerce is obviously one area that it's been growing substantially in Brazil. It used to be 5% of the total Brazil retail. And then we're expecting this year, with all this pandemic scenario that has shifted lots of consumption from, brick and mortar stores to online stores, that Brazil will represent about 10% of total retailing. So we have a comparison this year for Canada, it's 13.5% of the total retailing in Canada will be, according to our estimates, through e-commerce, and Brazil is gonna be on the ballpark of 10%. On this slide, I kind of just wanted to highlight Brazil. It's a very, very, very integrated economy. Consumers are very much integrated with the rest of the world. Brazilians are very westernized and very connected to the internet, very connected to social media. Facebook in Brazil back in 2010 was very, very, very incipient, very in the beginning. 2 years later, Facebook became #2 market for number of users in the world that access the platform. So Brazil, you got Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, and being the main media, social media that Brazilians interact. And those are some of the things for you to keep in mind as you think about marketing your products to the online, to the consumers that is going to eventually purchase these products online. Just to wrap up, I kind of wanted to I gave you the magnitude of the market. We talked a little bit about the size of the e-commerce that represent 10% of the total market. But one thing to think about, if you're thinking about coming into Brazil, either if you're selling products through e-commerce or if you're thinking about having a store in Brazil, you need to have local knowledge. As I said, Brazil is very, very westernized consumer base, very open to ideas and consumption, very, very low savings. But at the same time, there's some differences you need to think about. I put some pictures here because some clients of ours, long time ago, one of them it was a chain of pizza, an international chain of pizza that wanted to come into Brazil. And they did not know that one thing that's very important. Brazilians don't eat pizza for lunch. Pizza is seen, it's very important, especially in São Paulo, a very Italian city. It's everywhere, but it's very much a dinner dish. So putting his strategy together was important for our client to look at that, he needed to focus on dinner and have very limited service on lunch because Brazilians really don't eat pizza for lunch. The other thing, another coffee chain that we helped in the past coming into the country, they had a very hard time in the beginning because they did not realize that Brazilians just don't drink coffee to go. Brazilians, for them to drink coffee, it's a small coffee, especially in the city of São Paulo, which is very Italian. You're going to have a hard time finding anything that's not espresso. This has been changing now, right? But this is a few years ago. Now you'll find coffee to go in international chains in Brazil. but it's important for you to have this local knowledge. The other thing that I'd like to just leave with everyone here is that Brazilians, if they are going to buy something online, they want to pay installments. And this is very much worked out with the credit card companies, and it's everywhere. So 60% of all purchases that was done on e-commerce last year had some sort of a split in payment. So they expect you, if it's $100 for the purchase, 100 reais, they expect you to give them an option to pay in 3 installments, 3, 4, 5. This is the local culture, and you need to tag your business to it and make sure you're in success. The last thing is that if you're going to come in, you need to partner with a logistics company that know the country. Brazil is a complex country for distribution. It's getting better, but historically has had many problems over the years. So you want to make sure that you have a local partner that knows the ground and have the last mile logistics to bring the products to your consumers. So just to wrap it up and make sure that everyone lives here with some takeaways besides the number 5, right? The number 5 is if you have your business in Canada, and if you have a global business, and your global business is at about 100 million US, your potential market in Brazil is probably going to be 5 million. That's how you need to think about it. I know it's just a benchmark, but it's important. Even though some global companies that have operations in Brazil eventually will have Brazil as one of their top markets anywhere. As I said, Brazil is always in the top 5 markets for most consumer industries that we cover. Average per capita income, it's smaller than in Canada, obviously 5 times smaller on average, but we do have 5.5 million households in Brazil with income the same and above as the average income in Canada. And if you go on the income on the bracket of 300,000 US a year, then Brazil has got more households with that income than Canada. So a big opportunity here if you're coming into gourmet products and products that will command a higher purchase ticket. Brazilian consumers are very westernized and have very propensity to consume, have a high propensity to try out new things. So it's something to keep in mind. It's neither good or bad, but Brazil, if you give them Brazilians, you give them a chance, they get themselves in debt because savings are very low if you compare that to the high propensity consumption that the Brazilian consumers have. And then distribution, obviously, make sure that you partner with a local logistics company that know the ground and can deliver the products to you. I think this is it for now. I know I'm gonna bring it back to you now, and I'm open for questions, I think, at the end of the discussion here.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. As you said, questions will be answered at the end of the session as time permitting, and and according to the availability of time, will be answered by also by writing. I'd like now to call the business development at Plug Markets, Ailton Schoemberger. Welcome, Ailton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Paulo, for the introduction. Hi, everyone in Canada. Hope you guys had an amazing Labor Day, long weekend. So my name is Ailton, and I represent Plug Markets. Let me share here my screen, guys. Awesome, guys. So let me tell you a little bit of myself before we start this presentation. I'm Brazilian, was born in Brazil, but I moved to Vancouver 12 years ago and been living in this beautiful city for all these years. And In the past 5 years, I opened these plug markets to help brands succeed in the e-commerce market. So, well, guys, when you think about like, okay, let's think what is the most efficient way to enter Brazil? Why? Sorry. Are like you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna take my brand, my products to a new market. So I bring a few questions for you guys, and I'm sure most of the Canadian brands would think about that. It's a new market. I'm not quite sure whether the consumer is gonna like my product. Who are my local competitors? What are their pricing? How much investment would I need to enter Brazil? And then here's our solution for all the brands interested to enter Brazil. Our approach it's a bit different. We use a lot of data before doing any decision. So how we trying to do, it's a mix of collecting the data and using analytics before going to take any decision. And our approach, it's exactly like that. We would say you have a product, you want to understand a bit more about the market, about the, how is Brazil, how are they going to like my product? So we would say we start with a market intelligence report. With this marketing intelligence report, we're going to have, we're going to really understand how the customers' behaviors, how they like it. Brazil is very large, so you're gonna find consumers in the South Brazil that are very different from the consumers in the North part, and so on. So we would say like, okay, if you're gonna launch your brand in Brazil, maybe we shouldn't launch it nationally. Maybe let's find a specific spot in Brazil to launch your brand. In our market intelligence, we can see and we can show the brands here in Canada who are the customers, who are the competitors selling on that industry, how big of a market it is, what is the price that I can be selling my goods. Does it make sense? Brazil currency is different than the Canadian dollar, so how do I price it properly to be competitive, right? And also fulfillment plays an important role in Brazil. When you see Brazil, it's a super large country, and then you have to look into the shipping options and what is the best way to fulfill your products while you enter in Brazil. So when we start working with a new brand that decides to go to the Brazilian market, what do? It's the first step is really gather all the data possible and really put it in perspective. Okay, guys, this is how much we're going to spend, and this is the opportunity for my specific product. So what I like to do is really to create a product market validation, right? We won't go to the product, or we won't invest a lot of money or resources into getting to Brazil and then find out that it wasn't the right strategy or it wasn't the right product, right? It's much better to have all the market intelligence possible before we go to the second step. And our second step, it comes to the planning, right? Brazil, as we know, it's quite big, and you're gonna need to have like a proper planning, otherwise your whole strategy might not work. So for the first step, we see if Brazil, offers a good opportunity for the product, for the branding, which products to export, right? Sometimes we work with brands that they have over 100 products, but of course, not all their products going to be successful. So with him, the market intelligence, we can pick 2 or 3 products to start the operations in Brazil. And then we come to the second step, that is really understanding what is the cost of having my business in Brazil, right? As we know, Brazil, there is a lot of bureaucracy. So you have to really understand how to get it all the permits with government, have all the insurance, make sure you have the proper logistics strategies. So at the end, your operation doesn't turn into a loss. And then the third step, guys, like I said, I create plug markets to help brands succeed in the e-commerce. And in Brazil, we have a partnership with a company called Amazonia 32. They are based in São Paulo, and they are our partners in Brazil to help us, get your products in Brazil and with him and in the marketplaces that we sell. So when it comes to the online sales, we can create everything in the Brazilian Portuguese, right? Content, all the marketing campaigns, and put your product into the hands of influencers, getting into like the correct promotion, so people understand like what is your product and they can purchase online. And guys, let me show you here. These are the marketplaces our partner Amazonia 32 works with. So the solution we created it's pretty much all in one. We look into the marketing intelligence, see if your product has the product fit for the market. We analyze the costs. Okay, your product will be competitive. And then we work with this company, Amazonia 32, to get your product into their warehouse in São Paulo. And their team, their Brazilian team, will put your product in all these marketplaces. So it's pretty much just one strategy to get into all the marketplaces in Brazil. And of course, maybe not all these marketplaces will work for your brand, but we will work with you to show you the ones that will give the best return on investment. And that's pretty much our approach here, guys. We are very open to go and talk and explain to everyone how we create those market strategies, the campaigns, and yeah, feel free to ask as many questions as you like.
Thank you, Ailton. It was very interesting. And now I would like to call Andrea Mansano, Business Development at CCBC. Welcome, Andrea.
Hello, Paulo. Hello, Ailton. Hello, Marcel. Thank you for the opportunity of being here. And thank you, Marcel and Ailton, for the great content presented. So my role here is to present the activities and actions that the Chamber of Commerce Brasil-Canada has to offer to Canadian companies interested in expanding to the Brazilian market. At CCBC, I coordinate the business intelligence team responsible for supporting internationalization projects since the market research stage, passing by product, promotional material, and pitch adaptations until the final stage of scheduling of meetings with potential buyers or partners. We are headquartered in São Paulo, and we also have an office in Montreal with a total of 80 employees working on a daily basis. CCBC has recently addressed specific material for Canadian exporters available in our website and open to the public. A more general publication is called Quick Trade Facts, bringing trade between Brazil and Canada. And more specific themes presented are gourmet food and beverage market in Brazil, where we highlight the potential for Canadian gourmet products such as ice wine, premium cheese, blueberry and cranberry jams, seafood, snow crab, lobsters, among others. Pet markets in Brazil, where we highlight how this market has impressive numbers and the trends for products with nutritional properties for health conditions and different cosmetics according to type of fur or breed. Complementing Marcel's and Ailton's presentation, the Brazilian consumer market is wide and varied. The upper purchase power categories, B and A classes, accounts for more than 10% of the population. That represents around 21 million people, sort of the same analysis that Marcel has presented with the households in Brazil. So these wealthy consumers have specific characteristics, and despite of economic crisis environment, they maintain their consumption habits addressed to niche markets, continuing to buy premium products of different segments. This group of people is looking for differentiation in all aspects of life, and this differentiation should be perceived either in exclusive consumer products or in experiences. Unique design, superior and neat products, innovative flavors and aromas, single origin or imported items, and high quality ingredients are much appreciated. These customers don't mind paying more for accessing these high-end goods. For example, here I bring up some numbers. Brazilian wine imports have raised 35% in 2017, reaching 126 million liters. The cheese market in Brazil has reached a retail value of more than $7 billion US, an increase of 18% compared to the previous year. On the last decade, salmon imports have increased from $77 million to $518 million. And the category of pet products in Brazil was ranked with the highest value sales compared to other countries. It presents a potential growth from $636 million in 2018 to $1.2 billion US in 2023, an expectation of increase of more than 90%. In 2018, we have published an open study addressing Brazilian opportunities for Canadian exporters that brings information concerning Brazilian imports, tariffs, retail value, main players of the markets, quick analysis for the following categories of products: fish, cheese, fruits, wine, pet food, machinery, and medical devices. This study is currently being updated, and soon you will have access to more recent data from these categories. It is part of our work to promote business trade missions associated with the main trade shows of different sectors here in Brazil. A good example is Natural Tech, where 7 Canadian retailers had a business agenda prepared by us, connecting them to around 40 Brazilian companies in B2B meetings past year. Natural Tech, AgriShow, Hospitalar, APAS, FISPAL, these are some examples of big trade shows that usually receives Canadian companies here. Last year, our team from Brazil has traveled around 8 times to Canada to host events and present these opportunities to Canadian companies and associations of exporters, wanting to attract them to consider expanding their business to Brazil. If you're interested to know the potential of your product here, you can get in touch with me and the commercial team, and we can prepare a cost-free preliminary research. We know that the Brazilian market is full of opportunities, but is also very complex in terms of finding the right partners. So the Chamber of Commerce Brasil-Canadá can be this trustful strategic partner, and we will be very happy to assist you with market research, product adequacy, great partnerships, and good connections with potential clients here in Brazil. We are users of Euromonitor international database, so it's I'm very glad to count here with Marcel today. And also we have a wide variety of partners and members since also like Ailton from Plug Markets and Amazônia 32. So we can share all this good access with different types of companies here after this market research. So that's what I have for today. I'll leave my email here at the chat box, so you can reach me if you need. Thank you for the attention. Thank you, Paulo.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Now we can move into the questions. We got some questions for Marcel. There's one here. When you talk about beauty and personal care, can we have an idea on how ethnic beauty products respond to that? So maybe if you could comment a little bit on ethnic beauty products, how the market works a little bit. Marcel, you are in mute.
Sorry,
Okay.
I had a little tech problem here. Can you repeat the question, please? Just briefly.
Yes. When you manage, oops, when you comment about the beauty and personal care markets here in Brazil, the question was related to how ethnic beauty products perform into this market.
Okay, good question. I think that one of the things, the first thing you need to think about Brazil, even though Brazil, on average, as we talked about, it has an average income per capita of about $8,000 a year. It's a very developed market, beauty and personal care market. It used to be the third largest market in the world, and today is the fourth just because of exchange rates and everything that happened the last few years. Because of that, the market is very developed. So there's the where you find the products, the channels of distributions are very sophisticated, and yes, there is a lot of room for ethnic products in that sense. Brazil, I think one important thing about Brazilian female consumers of beauty and personal care products is that they are very, very open to trying out new products. I think it's interesting because I think in my household, I see sometimes there is more brands of conditioner, in my house than brands of shampoo, because I think my wife is always trying out new products. But if you look at our number, we see that Brazil is the only country in the world that companies sell more conditioning here than shampoo by a large margin. And this is because consumers are really willing to try new things all the time. And I think because Brazil has a very large population of African Brazilians, I think that there is a lot of room for ethnic products, and we've had clients in the past that have decided to come into the market, especially for the hair care, and have been very successable. So yes.
Excellent. So before we get some other questions from the audience, I'd like to remember the audience to please forward their questions through the chat. I do have another question for you, Marcel. You mentioned, and I like when you mentioned about some how can I say, cultural traps, that because people tend to take their culture for granted, and when they move to another country, I think the pizza example, and even the coffee to go in a culture that they just go and drink the coffee at the coffee shop.
Right.
So that might cause some frustration if the plan is not well thought of. And I wonder if you can also comment on how culture may be different from region to region in Brazil, because there's not really only one culture here in terms of consume.
Good. I think that's an excellent question, right? We are dealing with complexity here in Brazil because it's a very large country, like the US, and depending on where you are, you have not only very, very different levels of income, but you have very different types of culture, right? So if you think about Brazil, if you think about, São Paulo,
yeah,
Rio, Minas Gerais, I would say São Paulo is very much an Italian, Japanese city kind of type of thing. Very, very international, but at the same time, as I said, I think it's very easy it's very hard to find any kind of coffee that's not espresso in São Paulo, correct? And I think those little nuances change. If you, for example, if you're thinking about bringing maple syrup into Brazil, which is a staple Canadian product. If you talk about pancakes in Brazil, a lot of people are gonna, if you're outside of the main São Paulo, Rio, Minas kind of acts, a lot of people are gonna think that pancakes are savory, because in Brazil, pancakes are a savory dish and people don't have it for breakfast. But if you are in the larger cities where you have a much more international, you have a population that have lived abroad, that kind of, and then those are fine, right? That we understand what the product is, one of the applications of the product. And I think it's very important. If you go to the south of Brazil, it's German, Italian as well, still with incomes a little bit higher than the north and northeast. So just in general terms, the northeast and the north, outside of the main cities of those parts of the country, you're gonna find incomes that are lower, average incomes lower than the southeast and the south part of Brazil, and then the bulk of the high incomes concentrated in the São Paulo, Rio, and some cities in the south of Brazil. Obviously, if you go upstate within the state of São Paulo, you'll find also cities where per capita and the sophistication of the population will allow for certain gourmet and specialty purchases.
Right, excellent. And I think following from what you've said, it's important to point out that due to the diversified scenario we find in Brazil, there is room for almost any kind of product and any kind of company. So you don't really need to be a huge exporter to come to Brazil, because you can address niche markets just in the Northeast or just in the South or in the Southeast. So sometimes a product would not fit São Paulo because of a great competition or great quantities, but it might fit a smaller capital or even another region.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll move to some questions regarding e-commerce to Ailton. I have one here that is about labeling and how should you adjust your product if you're exporting by e-commerce to Brazil. What kind of what would you need to look for and take care of just to make sure that your product is properly packed to be delivered here in Brazil?
Yeah, Paulo, that's a very good question. And in Brazil, what do we need is to have the product localized, right? So we will definitely, as a brand, you will need to have the package, the label translated to Portuguese. But most important is not just a translation, is a localization of that product so the Brazilian consumers can understand. And we do help the companies to do this labeling. We offer the translation and localization of the product name. And I can give you guys an example. We are working with a Brazilian company. We do both ends. We help Brazilian companies get into Canada and Canadian companies get into Brazil. I give you guys this quick example of a Brazilian brand that sells cocada. A cocada is it's a coconut candy, very popular in Brazil, but here in North America, we don't really know what is, the consumers don't know what is cocada. So we help this company to translate their whole package for cookies, coconut cookies. That's just an example of how before launching the product into a new market, you need to understand and you need to do research and market intelligence to get it the proper labels and the proper names into the product.
Right. And another question refers more to in terms of what would be the process and how long it would take to get a product. If I want to export that product to Brazil, how long and what would be the steps to put my product into the marketplace for e-commerce?
Great. So the first step, as we do, we take a lot of data from marketplaces. In Brazil, the biggest marketplace, it's called Mercado Livre. But we do get data from Google. We do get a lot of data from different set points. And we can gather this data within 2 weeks to 4 weeks. So in a month, we can provide a Canadian company with a full market intelligence report on how well their product would do if they were selling online. So I say 1 month to get this data. And then we move to the next step, that is planning the logistics, the whole bureaucracy, the papers, and to gather the product in Brazil. And that, I would say, it not only depends on us, but it depends on like legal license from government, and each product will have their own variety of requirements to be imported into Brazil. So this step, it usually takes an average of 4 to 5 months, depending on the product, depending on the company. And then once the product is in there, it's just working out the logistics into getting the product from here all the way to Brazil.
Right. Yes.
Me. May I quickly add some information? Concerning the Brazilian market, I'm aware that different from Canada, we are very open to stamps at the label. So it should be easier as an adaptation for example, food and beverage or packaged products to Brazil, just to adapt the stamp at the label, not the full package. So that should be also an easier, a lower investment for the Canadian companies to enter the market. And then afterwards, if it's a good product and so on, you can make bigger investment in the packages. But the stamps are very common here.
Yeah. Back to Ailton, I see another question here. If you have tried MVPs.
That's a very great question, Paulo. I will say MVP is the minimum viable product. And that's exactly what we look to do here. Our company is really to help the small and medium-sized business to enter Brazil. So one way that we create this MVP, it's a strategy that we call it's a pre-sale. So we go to the market with all the product information, and we show it to prospects and to consumers to see if they would buy it and get their opinion about that product. So with that, we do a survey and can show to the Canadian business what are the consumers thinking about that product before they invest the money to exporting the product.
Okay. Well, I see another question here that for us to discuss a little bit the repercussions and risks of hiring Brazilians, or if there are other better strategies than hiring. I think maybe the first strategy before thinking about hiring Brazilians would be to look for a good partner. And the partner could be the Chamber of Commerce that would maybe help with this, finding what would be another partner, or an agent, or a company that would be sharing the efforts to put or to distribute the products here in Brazil. So I think before you setting up and hiring a group of people, would be good to have a local partner to be more sure of the strategy that you're gonna put forward. And we're coming close to the end now. the chat will be open for other questions. We can forward these questions to the speakers. And if you want, you can inform us also your email address so that the speakers can send your answer by email. And now we have to close because we're coming closer to another session. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who participated, especially the three panelists that have shared with us their knowledge to help us find better and easier ways to expand Canadian business into the Brazilian market. We hope this is just an inspiration, a first contact, and we are all here available for you for future contacts, and we hope to see much more Canadian products in the shelves of supermarkets and stores here in Brazil. And you can count on us to help you do that. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Ailton. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup à tous and à toutes. I would like also to remind you that we have other sessions today and the following days with very interesting content as well. Feel free to participate, and you can use the same link that you're using now to participate in the other sessions. Thank you very much. Au revoir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.